Welcome to Portraits of a Nation. Join us as we explore what shapes a country's identity, the people, places, sights and sounds that paint a picture of the world's greatest nations, Scotland. In 1860, in the Scottish town of Kirriemuir, James Matthew Barrie was born, the ninth of 10 children in a working-class family. Little Jamie grew up to be one of the world's most famous playwrights and authors, creating the enduring classic Peter Pan. An unusual child, James Barrie was a dreamer. He loved his mother's tales of pirates and began making up plays and acting them out with friends, already on a seemingly inevitable career path. In London, he became a successful author and playwright. Here, he met the 5 Llewellyn Davies boys in Kensington Gardens, where he and his wife regularly walked their St. Bernard dog. He became friendly with their mother, a member of the literary Du Maurier family, and spent a great deal of time with the children, entertaining them with his tales of adventure, pirates and fairies. Out of these sessions emerged Peter Pan, with characters named after 3 of the children, John, Peter and Michael. Peter Pan was first staged in 1904 and has been a much-loved story ever since.
I think its great attraction is that it appeals on every level. You can go to see it as a 3-year-old and be mesmerised about it. You can go to see it again as an adult and find something new in it. And I think that's its enduring appeal.
The play weaves its own special magic on every audience.
From the very first day it was performed, it was clear that he touched a very deep chord. I mean, everybody, almost everybody, from the very first performance could see that this was a really strange, magical, and actually rather dark and sinister play. I mean, it's because it's an amalgam of fun and games and really rather dark themes that it exercises such an extraordinary power.
Just as the boy Peter Pan never ages, neither does his story.
Mara Motswe had a detective agency in Africa at the foot of Kali Hill. These were its assets: a tiny white van, 2 desks, 2 chairs, a telephone and an old typewriter. Then there was a teapot in which Mara Motswe, the only lady private detective in Botswana, brewed red bush tea, and 3 mugs, one for herself, one for her secretary, and one for the client.
Alexander McCall Smith's series of books, The #1 Ladies Detective Agency, has delighted readers around the world. The first book had an initial print run of only 1,500 copies and ended up selling millions. The others in the series have had similar success, translated into more than 40 languages. The series' appeal owes much to the delightful character of the amply built Mama Precious Ramotswe, a woman deftly brought to life by her creator.
I am often in the United States mistaken for a woman. Readers say to me, "We're very disappointed to discover that you're a man." They really do. And indeed, I've had reviews where I'm referred to as she.
In person, the author is as much fun as his books. Despite being a professor of medical law and an expert on genetics and ethics, he has also written children's books and other amusing adult novels, and is founder and bassoon player in the Really Terrible Orchestra. Clearly, the distinguished professor is neither absent-minded nor one to take himself too seriously. And like him, his books spread a bit of joy.
Somehow they like the positive nature of the story. They feel that these are affirmative books, and they feel better. And that's something which they frequently say. People say, "I feel better." I'm writing about an Eden in those books, and I think people want to believe that somewhere there is something like that, and that there's a prospect of it. Stories provide us with a bit of hope, and why not? Because if we don't have any hope, our life is bleak.
No one individual is solely responsible for the invention of television, but John Logie Baird's contributions laid the foundations for much of today's technology. In 1924, he built a simple television and transmitted a very basic outline image to a receiver. He followed up with more complex images featuring Stooky Bill, a ventriloquist dummy, and then a real person, William Tainton, a terrified young worker from a nearby office. In 1926, he officially demonstrated his televisor, using moving images at 12.5 scans per second, in black and white with full tonal range.
It is now 12 years since this apparatus showed the transmission of outline images to the public for the first time. This is the scanning disc with its lenses. This is the second disc by which the light is further divided and passes into the light cell. This apparatus was shown to members of the Royal Institution and others on January 27, 1926, and showed true television images in light and shade for the first time.
Although Baird's mechanical television became superseded by electronic forms, he had already invented the equivalent of today's HD TV, the video recorder, 3D and colour TV, and laid the groundwork for radar and fibre optics.
Television has grown from a scientific novelty to a commercial service. At present, the range is limited to 30 miles in and about London. In this connection, it is interesting to note that as far back as 1928, I spanned the Atlantic with television. That was, of course, purely experimental, but who can foretell the future?
Pioneering outside broadcasts, live sports transmissions, and big screen TVs, Baird himself foretold the future. Labour MP Gordon Brown has the distinction of being Britain's longest-serving Chancellor of the Exchequer in 200 years. For over a decade, he managed the nation's finances with a firm hand, steering Britain through major economic reform and growth. When Tony Blair resigned in 2007, Brown became Prime Minister, but remained in the job for less than 3 years, returning to the backbenches in 2010. Often referred to as steely for his firm stance as Chancellor, Brown proved himself to be a man with a social conscience, formed from his upbringing as the son of a Church of Scotland minister. Extremely intelligent, he began university at just 16, but soon after lost all sight in his left eye and 70% in the other, resulting from an earlier rugby accident. Despite this, he graduated with first-class honours and worked as a television journalist before entering politics. At 49, he married for the first time, and a daughter was born in 2001. Tragically, the premature baby died within days. The couple went on to have 2 sons, the younger diagnosed with cystic fibrosis soon after birth. Internationally, Gordon Brown contributed much, leading by example during the global financial crisis. He also advocated strongly for a global response to climate change and to the humanitarian issues of poverty and social justice.
I believe that success will flow to, and the next stage of globalization will be driven by, those countries that are open and not closed, stable, pro-competition and flexible, able to adjust quickly to change, and can as a result find through their social and political cultures the best means of developing and creating wealth through the scientific, creative and entrepreneurial talent of their people, not least through being world-class in education and skills.
Gordon Brown's strong moral compass has done much to stir the global conscience. Arguably the most successful football manager Britain has seen, Sir Alex Ferguson has managed to stay on top of the game for years. He's collected plenty of silverware over the decades, with 30 trophies just during his time with Manchester United. In the 1998-99 season, he took the team to an unprecedented treble, winning the English League, the FA Cup and the European Cup. In 1999, he was knighted for his services to football. Fortunately, Ferguson has the attitude to tough things out. When he first went to Manchester, team members were dispirited and lacking motivation. Several of the players were older than he was, and he had to earn their respect. It took time, but he turned the club around from a bottom-dwelling team to league toppers. Not one to take any nonsense, he has a formidable temper, earning him the nickname Hairdryer for his blasts, presumably more than hot air, given the results.
Well, I was old and 21 when I came here, but I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know whether years ago, but they seem to have gone in quickly. And last year, 20 years, I thought was the landmark, and now we have an extra year to that. But I'm proud to have been at the right club. Yeah, it'd been interesting. It'd been interesting for the last 25 years.
Ferguson has a long career as a manager, pushing other teams up the ladder, including Aberdeen, with several cup wins after a drought of over 20 years. Even so, when he first joined Manchester United in 1986, no one imagined the level of success the club would achieve. Ferguson, however, had the capacity to bring out the best in his players. Later, when the club's fortunes rose, he backed his eye for talent with big dollars, notably signing 18-year-old Ronaldo.
And the physical attributes that go with it. And
It's quite easy to picture Gordon Ramsay as a footballer, which is what he first intended to be. Full of attitude, unafraid, he'd be in the middle of the pack, after the ball, kicking it with all his might. In fact, Ramsay the footballer would be much like Ramsay the chef, into it, boots and all. After a promising start as a professional player, injury stepped in, however, setting Ramsay on a different career path. Now, as one of the world's most awarded chefs, he's seen more stars than a concussed goalkeeper. He rose to fame relatively quickly, having worked with several acclaimed chefs at respected establishments in London, and spending 3 years in Paris, taking his skills to a new level. But while he's famous for his cooking, it's as a television personality he's gained international stardom. He never asks viewers to pardon my French, unconsciously peppering his conversation with inventive profanities that draw howls of protest and shrieks of laughter. He's written numerous books, made countless hours of television, and created some of the most successful restaurants around the world. He's passionate about food. He takes the business of food seriously and will not accept anything less than the best.
when you've got good food, good wine, one thing you don't want to do is start smelling smoke. So I wanted to ban smoking 5 years ago. I've never smoked in my life. I'm 37 years of age, and I think there's nothing worse when you're trying to eat and somebody being rather rude by smoking, and it's just sort of macerating your food and making it taste incredibly uncomfortable. So I want to stand my ground and sort of pay my customers great respect by saying I'm not going to tolerate it.
Somehow, Ramsay manages to spread himself around the world. His restaurants pop up like mushrooms, recently in Belgravia, Australia, Italy, England, France and America. Gordon Ramsay is clearly a glutton for hard work. While some would-be actors might dream of becoming a sex symbol, the reality for stars like Ewan McGregor can be far from romantic. A private life is frequently assumed to be public property.
Well, sorry, I suddenly forgot. I realised I'd forgotten it was Valentine's Day tomorrow. What was the question?
The question was, what makes real love more difficult or more easy than film love?
Real love?
Yes, real love, in real life.
How long
For
have you
you, your personal meaning about that.
Well, listen, that's not something I would discuss in this arena. What makes real love more difficult for me than on the screen? I think I'll keep that to myself if you don't mind.
Probably more than most mainstream actors, McGregor's parts in movies have included private parts in the context of a raw, honest appraisal of the human condition. Since leaving school at 16 to pursue acting, that has been the McGregor style, taking on demanding, challenging roles that have shaken cinema audiences out of a bored, vacant slumber. Popularly known as Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars prequels, his roles have been diverse, including his television series with friend Charlie Borman riding motorcycles around the world.
The fact that we came up with this idea less than a year and a half ago, Charlie and I, decided to ride around the world, and in the space of 10 months we planned it, did it, and now we have a book in the shops and there's a TV series on the television. So in the space literally of less than a year, we've managed to do that.
The series proved grueling, but drew attention to UNICEF activities in forgotten communities around the world.
Physically we were challenged the most in Kazakhstan, Mongolia and Siberia, and then we had Alaska, Canada and America to kind of physically get over our hardship, if you like. But mentally it's been difficult to adjust back, not to being back at home with our wives and family, but to business and work and pressures in that respect.
Scotland's surefire antidote to a bad mood is Billy Connolly. He's been making people laugh most of his life and has no intention of stopping. His own early life was harsh. His mother abandoned him when he was 4, and his father abused him through his adolescent years. Incredibly, he bounced back, still able to see the funny side of life and share it eagerly. At the age of 12, he decided he wanted to be a comedian and got there after detouring through welding and a stint with the military. He became a musician, playing his beloved banjo, but soon his chatter between songs became the main event, as audiences couldn't get enough of his quirky humour.
And I would like to be known as a comedian who acts sometimes. I don't want to be known as an actor. I don't think it'll ever happen to me anyway, but I would rather be known as a comedian than an actor. I'm very proud of being a comedian. I think we're a stalwart bunch of men.
Despite that, he is also a respected actor, having turned in excellent performances in comedic and dramatic roles, including his BAFTA-nominated performance in Mrs. Brown. His professional output is enormous, touring his live shows, appearing on television and in movies, and releasing numerous albums of music, comedy, and a crazy mixture of the two. His soulmate and wife is Pamela Stephenson, a former comedian who is now a clinical psychologist and helped him battle his personal demons. Remembering his own difficult childhood, he has established charitable funds, building youth hostels for abandoned children. He loves his comedy and wants to keep going into his old age, being politically incorrect and poking fun at the establishment.
If more people listened to comedians and poets, and fewer of them listened to politicians, we'd be in much better shape. You'd know more about how the world actually works.
Even in his 60s, Billy Connolly cannot resist being a naughty boy. The original, and some say the best, James Bond, Sean Connery, has appeared in over 60 feature films throughout his long career. Born into a working-class Edinburgh family, he joined the Navy at 16 and later worked various jobs, including an artist's model and polishing coffins. He made the leap from buffing coffins to a buffed bodybuilder, representing Scotland in the 1953 Mr. Universe contest. His 6 Bond portrayals are backed by a rich diversity of roles in films like Marnie, The Name of the Rose, The Untouchables, for which he won an Oscar, Finding Forrester, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. An enduringly attractive man, in 1999 he was named Sexiest Man of the 20th Century. Not bad for an almost 70-year-old.
Please don't crowd back there to the extent you impede the operators of our cameras, okay? but that will be unforgivable. All right?
In 1971, spectators had a peek of the making of You Only Live Twice, where Connery worked through a scene with co-star Jill St. John and director Guy Hamilton.
On the floor? No, on here, on the edge of this. Well, we've got, I've got spare perspex on for this. Oh, I see. So you picked it up. Have we got a Derek I presume I picked it up there for you.
Even though Bond films broke new ground, these were still by today's standards comparatively low tech, and Connery's physical strength, agility and enthusiasm were a valuable asset to the productions.
Right, but there's no great panic for these things, so we'll just get the... Right, fine.
404, take one.
Right, light them now. Ready, action! Out we go.
Now nearly 80, he's still enriching films. Scotland's Loch Ness Monster is the best known of several large and unexplained lake creatures reported around the world, and is a boom to tourism in the Scottish Highlands. Loch Ness is hundreds of meters deep in places and filled with slime and peat. Its exceptionally murky waters are believed to conceal deep underwater caverns connecting to the sea. Although there have been many hoax photographs, still some sightings, sonar recordings and footage remain unexplained. It's theorized that Nessie could possibly be a surviving remnant of a dinosaur-age creature such as a plesiosaur, a large aquatic reptile. Lack of evidence in the last decade, however, suggests that even had the Loch Ness Monster existed in recent times, it may now be extinct. Still, Nessie's allure endures, and research continues today.
This animal could not possibly be a vegetarian. There's no vegetable matter of any consequence in the loch, so we decided to make up a bait for a carnivorous animal, and we used various types of tasty and diffusible matter which we feel might attract a carnivore. There's blood meal in here, mashed eels, anchovy paste, agar-agar jelly, and also a hormone which we are trying, which we know does attract some species of reptile, just in case this animal is a reptile, despite what I just said, and indeed it might be attracted to this bait through this hormone-like chemical.
How are you going to use it?
Well, we're going to suspend it from a buoy in muslin bags, and also we're going to use it in a dry form like this here, scattered rather like rubby-dubby from the back of a boat.
Loch Ness's secrets might never be known, but that is part of Scotland's magic.